Welcome, Finija and Buna. As you all know that mitral stenosis is a long case and invariably will be kept. So there is no two ways. One case of mitral stenosis is always there. So please start your case.
He is a non-case of valvular.
Now it is better. Yeah.
It is better,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Yeah. Good. Better now. Yeah.
Valvular heart disease, and the patient was apparently normal 2 days back when he developed pain abdomen, which was acute in onset, continuous in nature. It was dull aching pain over the lower right side of the abdomen, radiating to the umbilicus, and it was associated with nausea. He also complains of fever for 1 day, which was continuous, high grade, associated with the chills and rigors, and it was relieved on taking paracetamol. No history of vomiting, constipation, bleeding via dysuria, hematuria. No history of abdominal distension, dyspepsia, mass per abdomen. No history of yellowish discoloration of eyes or urine. No history of rashes over the body and joint pain. Past history. The patient gives history of fever, joint pain, and swelling at 12 years of age, mainly in the elbow and the knee. Lasted for 2 weeks. It was medically managed. At the age of 25 years, he developed progressive dyspnea. First, the breathlessness was present on doing severe exertion, gradually progressed. Now he complains of breathlessness on doing ordinary activities. Evaluated and diagnosed to have some valvular heart disease, took medical
Can't hear anything now. Just can't hear anything.
She got disconnected. Let me check, madam. She got disconnected.
That's why I think the other girl should take over, Buna. Buna should take over, and her audio is like, she's getting a good audio, getting out of the good audio. The audio is also, there's some, problem with her equipment, whatever, laptop or whatever.
We are both presenting from the same place.
Oh, okay.
The same device.
All right.
She will.
If they have two devices, let them go to two different rooms.
Yes, sir, I think you can call her.
What happened, Bruna? What happened?
Yeah.
ഒന്നും കേൾക്കുന്നില്ലടാ.
Sanjay, you can unmute your. Finija, unmute. Finija, unmute and talk. Unmute and talk. We can see you. Please unmute.
Finija, go to the left-hand corner to the mute button and unmute that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now talk loudly. See that whatever is there, the The
Yes, ma'am.
yeah. Share the screen and you can start.
If you are not able to share the screen, it's okay. You can present without presentation.
Is it possible, sir?
Start. Please start. Start talking.
Yes, sir. Yes. No, no history of hoarseness of voice, no history of dysphagia, no history of bluish discoloration of fingers, toes, no history of weakness of limbs, deviation of angle of mouth. Treatment history. He is on tab penicillin 400 mg BD, tab metoprolol 50 mg OD. Family history, no history of similar illness in the family, no history of diabetes, hypertension, other significant illness in the family. Personal history, he is a non-alcoholic, non-smoker, takes a mixed diet, bowel and bladder habits normal, no history of drug allergies. Coming to examination, general examination, is conscious oriented, moderately built and nourished. Height is 168 centimeter, weight is 60 kg, BMI is 22.9, no pallor, icterus, cyanosis, clubbing, lymphadenopathy, edema. Vitals, pulse rate 62 per minute, regular in rhythm, normal volume and character, condition of vessel wall normal, no radio-radial, no radio-femoral delay, all peripheral pulses palpable normal. BP is 110 by 70 mm Hg, right upper arm, sitting position. Respiratory rate 20 per minute, regular abdominothoracic, JVP not elevated, and he is afebrile. Airway examination. Facial deformity, mouth opening more than 3 fingers, Mallampati class 2, thyromental distance 8 cm, neck extension normal. Examination of ears, inspection, shape of precordium normal, apex deep visible, no other visible pulsation, no dilated veins or scars. Palpation, apex beat palpable at left fifth intercostal space, half-inch medial to mid-clavicular line. Tapping in character, no thrill, no palpable P2, no left parasternal heel. Percussion, right heart border corresponds to right sternal margin, left heart border corresponds to apex beat. Auscultation, mitral area, S1 was loud, S2 heard normal. Opening snap was present. A low pitched rough rumbling, mid diastolic murmur, grade 3/6 with pre-systolic accentuation, best heard in the left lateral position in full expiration with the bell of the stethoscope. Other areas S1, S2 heard normal. Examination of GIT, oral cavity normal, examination of abdomen, inspection, shape of the abdomen normal, umbilicus central and inverted, all regions move with respiration, no visible pulsation, peristalsis, dilated veins, scars, hernial orifices and genitalia normal. On palpation, no local rise of temperature, tenderness was present in the right iliac fossa, guarding was present in the right iliac fossa and rebound tenderness was present. No other mass palpable, no hepatosplenomegaly. Percussion, liver dullness, upper border at right fifth intercostal space, no shifting dullness. Auscultation, normal bowel sound heard. Examination of the respiratory system, upper respiratory tract normal. Examination of chest normal. Examination of CNS, higher mental functions normal. Cranial nerves normal. Motor system examination normal. Sensory system and reflexes are normal. Summary, 32-year-old male patient presented with complaints of pain abdomen, nausea, and fever for 2 days. He is a non-case of valvular heart disease, NYHA class 2, on treatment with beta blocker. Regular on examination, regular pulse, tapping apex beat, loud S1, opening snap, and mid-diastolic murmur with a pre-systolic accentuation at the apex. And on abdominal examination, tenderness, guarding, and rebound tenderness in the right iliac fossa. Now admitted for laparoscopic appendicectomy. Diagnosis: 32-year-old male patient, non-case of mitral stenosis, rheumatic in etiology, NYHA class 2 with acute abdomen, came for laparoscopic appendicectomy.
Okay, I went through all, so I've heard everything. But your case has absolutely no cardiac symptoms at all, right?
NYHA class 2, madam. He was having, he developed.
So do you want me to discuss lap appendicectomy or you want me to discuss mitral stenosis? Anyway, your case is, see, your patient didn't come out with any symptom. Okay, now what are the salient cardiac symptoms which this patient generally come for?
Patient,
supposing your case is NYHA grade 3, say. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So what will be the usual symptoms you will find in these cases?
NYHA classification consists of 4 elements: dyspnea, palpitation, angina, and syncope. So it is classified into 4 classes. NYHA class 1 is, in a cardiac patient, there will be no symptoms. There is no limitation of physical activity, and there will be no symptoms on doing ordinary activities. In NYHA class 2, in a cardiac patient, there will be mild limitation of physical activity, and the patient will have symptoms on doing ordinary work. Then in NYHA 3, the patient will be having symptoms on doing less than ordinary activity, and there will be a moderate limitation of physical activity. And NYHA class 4, the patient complains of symptoms on at rest.
So what are the symptoms basically? Supposing the patient is NYHA grade 3. So yours, so what are the symptoms the patient can present to the hospital?
NYHA class 3 maybe in mitral stenosis, the patient may be having a PND with the pulmonary edema, PND or orthopnea with the pulmonary edema symptoms.
Just that? Only,
only
PND? So patient will complain of dyspnea. Okay, dyspnea, orthopnea, paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea. Anything can happen. What else? What other symptoms patient can have?
Chest pain.
Why chest pain? Okay, now the patient is having dyspnea. Why dyspnea? Why orthopnea? Okay. Why PND?
It is breathlessness, maybe due to PND or PND or orthopnea.
Why? See, supposing I run.
Yes, ma'am.
200 meters, 300 meters, and I start getting breathless, right? I get breathless, right? Yes. I don't have any heart disease, but I get breathless. Whereas a patient of mitral stenosis is getting breathless. Is there a difference between the two of us?
Yes, ma'am. In mitral stenosis, there is decreased left ventricular filling that can lead to decreased cardiac output, and also due to obstruction to the left ventricular filling flow, there will be increased left atrial pressure. This can cause left atrial enlargement, and also this pressure will be transmitted to the pulmonary circulation, thereby causing increase in pulmonary vascular pulmonary congestion and pulmonary hypertension.
All right. So what is the difference for me, for a normal person to get breathless? Why am I getting breathless?
It depends on the excess tolerance, ma'am. These patients.
No, even if you run, you will get breathless, right? If you're running fast.
Yes, ma'am.
So is there a difference? So why is a normal person getting breathless while running?
Due to increase in myocardial oxygen demand and due to reduced cardiac output in MS and while exertion in exercise, we also will have increased oxygen demand. So to cope up.
So that is compensated by increase in cardiac output. Also,
Yes.
the rate and depth of respiration goes up, isn't it?
Yes.
So that is the difference. Okay, now you said patient can also get chest pain. Why chest pain?
Chest pain and cause may be due to one is due to the pulmonary congestion, that is pulmonary due to pulmonary hypertension, and also there will be the decreased cardiac output can cause severe left ventricular dysfunction that can lead to myocardial
Chest pain. Very good. Any other symptom patient can have?
Hemoptysis due to pulmonary.
That you said already. Patient can have hemoptysis. Anything else?
History of syncope, decreased exercise tolerance, palpitations.
Palpitations. Why palpitations?
Palpitation may in the case of an MS, it may be due to development of AF, then also due to decreased cardiac output, the patient may be getting or tachycardia. This can cause palpitations.
Okay. So also in your thing, you have to say no history of syncope. That has to come in your history. Okay. So palpitations, no history of palpitations, no history of syncope. Okay. That has to be part of your history. Also, what else? You said exercise tolerance. No, low exercise tolerance, isn't it?
Yes.
Why low exercise tolerance?
Due to decreased cardiac output, ma'am.
So patient can be in failure, right?
Yes,
Cardiac failure.
Congestive cardiac failure. So if there is a low cardiac output, then also you can have easy fatigability in these patients, right? Okay. So you said as you, I'll tell you what you missed in this, in your presentation. You didn't talk about any hospitalization earlier. That has to come in your history. Okay. And also no history of allergies, no history of coughs, in your past history, jaundice, asthma, addiction, abuse, all these have to come because addiction and abuse can also cause valvular heart disease. All right. So all these have to be part of your history. In your vitals, you said no radiofemoral delay, no, what is that? Something like that you said. But what is more important is apex pulse deficit.
Yes.
Okay. So apex pulse deficit is more important. And in your general examination, what you should generally say is in these cases, you will always take a arterial line, right?
Yes,
so
yes,
you have to talk about Allen's test.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So I think somebody is putting on the chat about JVP. She spoke about JVP. She also spoke about, yes. And you didn't speak about embolic. I think you did say about embolic episodes. You did say that. Yeah. You have to talk about Allen's test. So what is Allen's test?
To know the patency of the radial artery. In this, we will ask the
Is it
patient.
patency? Is it patency?
Collateral.
Yes, collaterals.
Collateral circulation.
So you have, ulnar collaterals, right? So
Yes,
how do you do it?
Ask the patient to clench the fist for 30 seconds and occlude both the ulnar and radial artery, and ask the patient to open the hand, then and watch for.
You have to even raise your hands.
Raise your hands and remove the ulnar occlusion, and then look for the
Also, after occluding the ulnar artery and radial artery, I will keep the hand higher up. Then then I will ask the patient to unclench the hand. If there is any blanching, then it is okay. And then I will slowly remove the obstruction of the ulnar artery. Then there should be refilling of the blood vessels within 5 to 15 seconds. In that case, the collaterals are filled.
Usually 3 to 7 seconds it takes.
Okay.
It can easily fill. Okay. So anything beyond 7, you have to start. You have to do the other side, other test also. I mean, you have to occlude the ulnar and remove the radial. You should do both.
Both, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you should do both. Anything beyond 7 seconds, you have to do that. Okay. All right. And also, you said about apex on inspection. Apex pulse is visible, but you also have to say where is it visible.
Yes, ma'am. So in the fifth intercostal.
Yeah, so you have to say that. Okay. And in your auscultation, you spoke about the murmur, but you did not speak about whether it is radiating anywhere, whether it increases with exercise and decreases with rest. This also has to be part of your presentation when you're talking about auscultation. So these are just few deficiencies which I found, otherwise perfect presentation. All right. So just take care of these things. Now coming to your presentation, your patient of course had only a NYHA grade 2. I'm not going to discuss NYHA grade 2 in this patient. I am saying that this patient is NYHA grade 3. All right. Patient is NYHA grade 3. Okay. So this patient has palpable P2. Patient has JVP raised. Patient is having a parasternal heave. All right. So patient is having everything. So when I'm saying palpable P2, parasternal heave, what am I suggesting?
Patient is having pulmonary artery hypertension
And right ventricular heart failure.
Yes, which means the patient is having pulmonary artery hypertension, right? So also you spoke about, you said about you said about the first heart sound being loud. Why is the first heart sound loud?
In MS, there is increased pressure gradient between the mitral transvalvular area, which causes the opening the leaflet to open wide, and the during closure of the mitral valve, it is closed from a higher greater distance. It causes loud S.
See what you should use. You're right. You're actually right. But scientifically, how you have to talk about this, the first heart sound is loud because of the rapidity with which the right ventricle pressure rises at the time of the mitral valve closure. Okay. So because of the LA pressure is already high, the LV will take more time to accelerate and the leaflets are still floating away, right? Otherwise, what happens in a normal person? It starts semi-closing, isn't it? Whereas because the LA pressure is already high, the LV can take a
Wide open.
longer time, right? So the leaflets are still floating. What do you call? It is floating away from the closure. So what happens? Therefore, at the time of contraction, what happens? Because of the transmitral gradient, the valve is still pliable. So then it snaps. So it snaps closure. Okay. So it closes very fast. So it is akin to if you're staying away from the door and you have to close the door like this. What happens? It will bang close, right? Whereas if you're staying very close to the door, you can simply close it like that, isn't it? So it is akin to that. So what does it tell you? When you say that the first heart sound is loud, it also gives you some more information. What information does it give you?
Increased left atrial pressure.
And
it means it gives you information that the valve is still pliable. Okay, there is no calcification. Okay, So, and so all these are, and probably a good patient for mitral valvuloplasty, probably. Also about opening snap, what is the cause of, what is the
Opening snap is
reason you get the opening snap?
usually the opening of the mitral or tricuspid valve does not make any sound, but in due to increased pressure gradient, also the opening increased flow, the opening of the mitral valve produces a sound that is known as opening snap.
So no, you have to, because you're right, because of the transvalvular gradient, what happens is the subvalvular apparatus is suddenly it's tensing of the leaflet. Okay, because of the tensing of the leaflet and the subvalvular apparatus. So which comes to the next question. You're talking about the leaflet and the subvalvular apparatus. In mitral stenosis, what exactly is the organic problem? How is the mitral valve apparatus affected? I'm talking about mitral valve apparatus, which means everything about the mitral valve.
Mitral valve apparatus comprises of the mitral valve annulus, leaflets with the commissures. Then we have the chordae tendineae and the papillary muscles underlying left ventricle.
They are all the subvalvular apparatus, right? So what happens to the annulus, leaflets?
There will be leaflets, the thickening of the leaflets. First there will be thickening, then commissure fusion will be present, then shortening of the salvular area, the chordae tendineae and papillary muscles, and also the annular fusion will be also fibrosis will cause fish mouth appearance of the mitral stenosis.
So how will you grade mitral stenosis?
Grading, it's mainly on the mitral valve area, then the mild, moderate, and severe. It is classified into mild, moderate, and severe. Depending on the valve area, if it is more than 1.5 centimeters square, mild. Moderate, it is 1 to 1.5 centimeters square. And if it is severe, it is less than 1 centimeter square.
Okay. And what about pulmonary hypertension grading?
Then other criteria includes pressure gradient, mean pressure gradient, pulmonary artery hypertension. The pressure gradient will be in mild mitral stenosis, it will be less than 5 millimeter of mercury, and in moderate 5 to 10, and severe it is more than 10. Pulmonary artery pressure will be in mild, it is less than 30, and in moderate 30 to 50, and in severe more than 50.
Correct. Very good. So you said the patient had rheumatic fever in the past at the age of 12, right? So what are the Jones criteria?
Jones criteria include, it is to diagnose the rheumatic fever. It include 5 major and minor criteria. 5 major criteria include polyarthritis, carditis, Sydenham's chorea, erythema marginatum, and subcutaneous nodule. And in minor criteria, fever more than 38.5 degrees Celsius, then polyarthralgia, then in ECG, prolonged PR interval, and in laboratory investigations, the ESR will be high and CRP will be high. To diagnose rheumatic fever, either present to
So what are the features of subacute? Okay, I got it. What are the features of subacute bacterial endocarditis?
In subacute, bacterial endocarditis occurs in a already deformed valve affected by a low virulence organism. The patient will be having fever. Then with the blood cultures will be positive for with the virulent organisms. That is a major criteria. Then the major criteria includes blood culture, 2 blood cultures, and minor criteria there will be fever, then immunological signs like Osler's node, road spots, then vascular lesions like
hemorrhage, linked hemorrhages, then Janeway lesions, then microbiological evidence of
At least
and
one culture.
endocarditis.
One culture
Okay,
positive.
okay, okay. And thromboembolic episodes are much common with subacute bacterial endocarditis. So you said about the rheumatic fever, right? So why should the heart get affected in rheumatic fever?
The rheumatic fever is usually caused by group A beta hemolytic streptococci.
No, but why the heart is affected? I just want to know why the heart should be affected, right?
So, the antibodies react to the self antigens in the heart tissue. So that's why.
Very correct. It's an autoimmune response and it is triggered by the molecular memory which is in the heart, right?
Yes.
So it connects. So it So it affects the connective tissue and then in the heart. So that's why it causes carditis,
And
arthritis, and things like that. So all these are because of the molecular mimicry which is there. Okay. So come to the, I think part of the pathophysiology you already said, right? So if you see the natural history of progression of mitral stenosis, what happens to the pathophysiology? What is the natural pathophysiology in mitral stenosis?
Normal mitral valve area is 4 to 6 centimeters square. In mitral
Yes.
stenosis, there will be narrowing of the mitral area.
Right.
This causes mechanical obstruction of the blood flow to the left ventricle, which in turn causes decrease in stroke volume and decrease in cardiac output. Due to decrease in left ventricular filling, there will be developing of a transvalvular pressure gradient. This pressure gradient increases the left atrial pressure, which will passively transmit to the pulmonary venous vasculature, and it causes
No, because of the mechanical obstruction itself. So what happens? So there will be a back pressure, right?
Yes, increase in LA pressure, increase in pulmonary venous pressure, which in turn lead to pulmonary artery pressure increase, causing pulmonary artery hypertension, which causes right ventricular hypertrophy, right ventricular failure, or tricuspid regurgitation. Also, due to increase in the left atrial pressure, there will be dilatation of LA, left atrium, which in turn lead to thromboembolic episodes and atrial fibrillation. Also, due to pulmonary venous congestion, when the pressure increases above the oncotic pressure, there will be interstitial edema, which will causes increase in work of breathing, decrease in the compliance of the lung, causing dyspnea, PND, etc.
Very good, very good. So what happens initially?
No problem on the left side. What about the left side? This is all back pressure.
Yes, ma'am. Forward flow is decreased in, so it causes a decrease in the stroke volume and decrease in the cardiac output.
Very well. So basically, initially what happens with the stenosis of the valve? What happens is initially the LA starts dilating to accommodate the pressure. That's how the LA starts dilating, right? So beyond that, what happens? There is disorganization of the atrial muscle, the bundle, and all that. And then the back pressure, then the pulmonary artery venous hypertension, then eventually pulmonary artery hypertension, then there can be tricuspid regurgitation. All these can happen, and because of the disorganization of the atrial muscle and the bundle, your patient can get atrial fibrillation. Isn't it? Okay. So, what is the generally what is the medical treatment? See, let's say your patient has got atrial fibrillation also. Okay. So, what will be the medical treatment in this case?
If the patient is having atrial fibrillation, then I have
No, with atrial fibrillation. NYHA grade 3 with atrial fibrillation.
Okay, madam.
So that comes to your diagnosis. See, when you gave the diagnosis, okay, you have to give a full diagnosis. So you only said that the patient is having pain abdomen and or what do you call? You said pain abdomen, a case of mitral stenosis, the grade NYHA grade 2. That's all you said, and rheumatic, probably of rheumatic origin. That's what you said, right?
Yes,
isn't it? So here you have to say whether the patient had atrial fibrillation or whether the patient is having normal sinus rhythm, whether the patient is in congestive cardiac failure or not in failure. Okay, all these have to come in your diagnosis. Okay,
Yes.
so something also which you missed. So in your diagnosis, B and NYHA grading that you said. So all these have to come in your diagnosis. Okay. So your medical treatment, you said what all? You said the patient will have beta blockers. What else you said?
Okay. The patient will be on beta blockers, calcium channel blockers, and if the patient is in failure, then diuretics will be given, and then digoxin can also be given for rate control, and for
Beta blocker or calcium blocker or digoxin. It's not all three. Okay, then
in AF, the patient will be also given anticoagulation. Oral vitamin K antagonist will be given.
In AF,
what anticoagulation is given? What anticoagulation?
Vitamin K antagonist, warfarin.
Okay. All right.
Then I am making a therapeutic index of INR 2 to 3.
Correct.
What are the other drugs you will give? Anything else you will give? What is the medical management of mitral stenosis? This is what madam wants to know.
In atrial fibrillation, we have to
No, not just atrial fibrillation. If a patient is coming to you, what are the other drugs you will give?
In mitral stenosis, our medical management should be aimed to the anti-cardiac failure measures like beta blockers, calcium channel blockers, diuretics with or without digoxin. Then in we have to maintain either maintain a normal sinus rhythm or to reduce the rate with the beta blockers or calcium channel blockers, and we have to give anticoagulation. Usually we use vitamin K antagonist warfarin.
And then
secondary profile of rheumatic fever happens.
And then
If the
for infective endocarditis.
if the patient is positive for surgery, we have to give infective endocarditis prophylaxis.
Your patient is
So all of them get
no. What are the guidelines?
Endocarditis prophylaxis. What are the latest guidelines?
For infective endocarditis prophylaxis is given in patients with prosthetic heart valves, cyanotic congenital heart disease, or congenital repaired congenital heart disease with residual lesion, cardiac transplantation, or any previous history of infective endocarditis.
And patient is having periodontal disease. The rest of them do not get infective endocarditis prophylaxis. Remember that. Okay. And the thing is about, see, what are the ones, for example, your patient is having some infection. So presence of infection, anemia, you have to treat anemia in these patients. If the patient is hypothyroid, you have to treat hypo or hyperthyroidism. Okay, all these pregnancy can, see, all these are things which can precipitate and push the patient one level above, one class above, right? So you have to be prepared about all this. So in your preoperative preparation, preoperative optimization, what all you will look for?
Preoperatively, we have to take care.
Patient is coming for lap appendicectomy, right? So how will you do your preoperative evaluation?
With a detailed history and examination, which will in which we have to look for the severity of the mitral stenosis, any complications associated, any other comorbidities. We have to look for the treatment history, what the medications the patient's on. If the patient on beta blockers, or calcium channel blockers or digoxin, we have to we will ask the patient to continue the drugs. And if the patient is on diuretics, and there will be if we are expecting a major fluid shift,
will you do a cardiology referral to this patient? You said everything. Will you do a cardiology referral to this patient?
I will ask for investigations, routine blood.
What all investigation you will ask for?
Complete blood count, including HP, to rule out anemia, and total count to rule out any infections, and platelet count as a baseline, then RFT as a baseline, then serum electrolytes. If the patient on diuretics or digoxin, we have to know about the electrolytes. Then
Correct.
we have to do an ECG, chest X-ray, and then
What do you
echo.
find in the ECG?
ECG, first we will look for the rate in the ECG, and the patient also, if the patient is in the sinus rhythm or the patient is in AF, then in mitral stenosis there will be P mitral, that is wide notched P wave in the lead 2 and biphasic P wave in the B1. Then also if the patient is having pulmonary arterial hypertension, P pulmonale can be seen. And if there is also right ventricular hypertrophy, that is predominance of R wave, right axis deviation. These are the changes we see in
RV1 and V1, right? Okay. So you said about X-ray. What are the findings on an X-ray?
X-ray.
There will be decreased cardiothoracic ratio. And then normal or increased cardiothoracic ratio. So then the left heart border will be straightening due to the left atrial enlargement. Then the prominence of the pulmonary conus, and also due to the shortening of aortic knuckle. Then the patient will have
and right ventricular hypertrophy.
Right ventricular hypertrophy. Then double density sign due to left ventricular left atrial enlargement. Then if the patient is having pulmonary hypertension, the patient will be having annular sign, that is the prominence of the upper lobe veins. Then there will be a lower lobe collapse and calcification of the mitral valve will be seen.
Curly B lines and curly. Right. What other investigation you will ask for?
Echocardiography, ma'am.
What do you find in the echo?
Okay. In it, 2D echo, I can find. I would like to know the mitral valve morphology, like thickening, and if there is any LA thrombus or clot, then left atrial enlargement dilatation.
For finding out the clot, which is better, 2D echo or which examination is better? T is ideal for finding out the clots. You may not get a good window, right? So what you will find in 2D echo?
For planimetry, assessing the mitral valve area, to assess the in Mohd we can assess the pressure gradient. Then the mobility of the mitral valve, is the mitral valve pliable or not. Then pulmonary arterial hypertension, assessing the other valvular abnormalities, ventricular dysfunctions, regional valve motion and ejection fraction.
Doming of the leaflets. You'll find the anterior leaflet is like a hockey stick. Hockey stick appearance of the anterior leaflet. And there will be doming of the leaflet. And in Doppler, what will you find?
Increasing the pressure gradient.
Pressure gradient and pulmonary artery hypertension. All these. What is pressure half time? You've heard of pressure half time?
It's grading.
It's for grading mitral stenosis, right? So what is it? It is the time taken for the diastolic pressure between LA and LV to decrease to half the initial value.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so based on the pressure half time, you can grade the mitral stenosis as mild, moderate, or severe. Okay, so you will do a 2D echo, and if you find that the patient is having atrial fibrillation, you will also do a TEE in this patient, right? And so what are the guidelines for non-cardiac surgery? In your case, it is a non-cardiac surgery. What are the guidelines and what are the predictors of poor outcome? Right?
Yes, ma'am.
So there are certain guidelines for non-cardiac surgery, right? Okay, now one more thing. Supposing the patient is having a pliable valve. I forgot to tell you. So what score is done for this patient to know whether the patient is fit for? Wilkins score. So Wilkins score will be based on what?
With 4 parameters: wall thickening, leaflet thickening, leaflet calcification, leaflet mobility, and subvalvular thickening.
Right. So if the score has to be less than 8.
Less than 9, 8 or 9.
Okay, no problem. So as I told you now, the patient has come for lap appendicectomy. So what are the guideline for non-cardiac surgery? So what are the predictors of poor outcome?
Poor outcome it depends upon the severity of the mitral stenosis. Severity can be we can know from the history itself, NYHA grading. Then in the examination also, then by evaluating the patient with the 2D echo, we can know about the severity of the disease. If it is mild mitral stenosis, we can proceed with the surgery with the hemodynamic monitoring. Then if it is
one is functional, right? You have to look at the functional status of the patient, isn't it? That is number one. Number two, you have to identify whether the surgery is intermediate
or elective surgery,
elective or emergency, and also whether the surgery is intermediate risk or mild risk or severe risk, isn't it? So any non-cardiac surgery, remember these two are very, very important. One is to know the functionality of the patient. So that will you will be able to tell you by looking at the history, physical examination, and whether the patient is having any dyspnea. Like your patient is superb, no problem at all. Pulmonary artery hypertension is not there. Patient is having no cardiac symptoms. Patient is not having any dyspnea, no chest pain, nothing at all, right? But then I'm talking about a patient who's having dyspnea, a patient is having atrial fibrillation, patient is having chest pain, patient is having palpitations. Okay, so one is you have to look into the functionality, how much the patient can
function.
So you have to see what is the functionality of the patient. You will be doing a breath holding time on the patient. You will be asking the patient to walk and see how much the patient can walk. All right. And secondly, you will look into the risk. Risk is surgical risk. Now your patient is lap appendicectomy. What risk is this? What is the risk?
Intermediate risk.
Yes. Presence of any abdominal surgery or thoracic surgery is all intermediate risk. Okay. All right. So then what else?
If the
in the preoperative period itself, I said you should say that the patient should take proper consent, right? Whether the patient can be put on ventilator, so that consent has to be taken, right? So what else? What other what other risk? Presence of any other comorbidities will add to the risk.
Yes, ma'am.
Isn't it? So you have to see, and presence of RV dysfunction add to the risk, right?
Yes.
So, so now your patient is posted for lap appendicectomy, okay? And the patient, as I said, is NYHA grade 3, all right? And patient is on anticoagulants. Now, how are you going to manage this case once your patient is posted elective for surgery?
Elective, then I will continue the rate control drugs like beta blockers, calcium channel blockers. If the patient is on diuretic, I will withhold the previous night dose and also assess the electrolytes. Then if the patient, as the patient is on anticoagulant, if the patient is on warfarin, then I will ask the patient to withhold the dose for from 5 days before prior to surgery. Then I will bridge him with the injection heparin or a low unfractionated heparin or a low molecular weight heparin. Therapeutic dose for low molecular heparin, 40 milligram BD dose. Then on the day of prior to the surgery, 6 hours prior to surgery, if the patient is on unfractionated heparin, I will withhold the dose. And if the patient is on low molecular weight heparin, 12 hours prior to
It's an emergency surgery, no? Emergency. It's an appendectomy.
I just said, ma'am, it's an elective surgery.
Okay, okay.
So if it is an elective surgery, how are you going to? Okay, right. You said it correctly. And if it is an emergency surgery, as madam said, how will you go about? Patient is on warfarin. So what will you do?
We will give injection vitamin K and
How
arrange
much? How much?
10 mg, 10 mg
Yes.
dose with prior to surgery, and we will arrange fresh frozen plasma.
Yes.
Or if prothrombin complex concentrated
Yes,
available,
correct.
then we can give them.
How much of FFP will you give?
Depending upon the INR.
So coming to INR, so how much of INR will you maintain?
Ma'am, for surgeries, we will prefer to have less than 1.5.
About 1.5, not less than 1.5. 1.5, right? So
Yes,
you'll
ma'am.
maintain an INR up to 1.5. So you will give generally around 15 ml per kilogram of fresh frozen plasma. But again, it has to be titrated to the INR of the patient. It's not standard, right? You have to titrate to the INR of the patient. Okay. So now what monitoring you will do for this patient? So you've taken the patient inside.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Now what monitors you will attach?
After checking the machine monitor and suction is ready, and arrange the airway equipments, and after keeping the emergency drugs and medications, I also defibrillator in the theater. I will attach pre-induction monitors, ECG, non-invasive BP, pulse oximetry, and I would like to insert an arterial cannula under local anesthesia to the radial artery. And after post-induction, I would like to do ET CO2 monitoring, temperature monitoring, and urine output monitoring.
Will you put in a central line?
Ma'am, as it is a appendicectomy, we won't be have.
This is grade 3.
Yes, ma'am.
You have to put in a central line in grade 3, right? Grade 1 and 2, if you avoid all this, it's fine. But in grade 3, you have to step up your monitoring.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay. So you have your monitors, and now you have to induce the case. So
Yes,
what are the principles of management of general anesthesia in these cases?
What are your goals?
My hemodynamic goals will be to maintain the normal sinus rhythm, or to avoid any tachycardia, and avoiding tachycardia, also maintain the preload with the judicious fluid administration, maintain the afterload, and also any increase in the PVR should be avoided.
Right. All right. So you said that. So first, for one, you said, will you use pre-medication? What pre-medication you will give?
Benzodiazepine, midazolam 1 mg IV should be given to the patient. Under monitoring, we should give because it can cause hypoxia, hypercarpia.
Anticholinergic?
Ma'am, we will avoid that.
Pre-medication will you give?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am, because it can cause tachycardia. So we can avoid anticholinergic in this patient.
So pre-oxygenation is a must in all these patients.
Yes, ma'am.
How will you induce the case?
After pre-oxygenating for 3 minutes with 100% oxygen, I will prefer to give, as the patient is 60 kg, I will give injection fentanyl 2 mics per kg dose of 120 mics IV. Then I will induce the patient with the injection etomidate 0.2 mg per kg, that is 12 mg in this patient. And after confirming a back ventilation.
Why etomidate?
As it
Why
is a
etomidate?
etomidate is cardio stable. It won't cause any increase in heart rate or any decrease in hypotension or decrease in contractility of the heart. So I will prefer.
What about propofol? Will you use propofol?
No, ma'am. Propofol can cause hypotension, and so it will be usually avoided in this grade and grade A and.
So hypotension because of sudden fall in SVR. Here you
SVR.
do not want any fall in SVR because it's a fixed output state and it cannot compensate. Same reason why we cannot do an inhalational induction in these patients. So most of the inhalational agents can cause a sudden fall in SVR, isn't it? So, okay, now you say that then what happens? Then how do you give your induction drugs in these patients?
Slow and diluted doses of induction is preferable in mitral stenosis as the cardiac. It is a low fixed cardiac output, so peripheral circulation will be sluggish. So arm to brain circulation time will be prolonged. So I will prefer to give a slow induction in those patients.
Okay.
Then
So how will you give fluids in these patients?
Judicious administration of fluids are necessary because it can cause increase if the patient going to increase in preload can cause pulmonary edema intraoperatively and decompensation. So I will give maintenance dose of fluids.
So even for lap appendicectomy, you have to give judiciously. Very good. But still the preload has to be adequate.
adequate.
Okay. Because you're giving lap appendicectomy. Because it is a lap appendicectomy, your preload also has to be adequate. That's why I said CVP monitoring is very, very important in these patients. And you always have to maintain a high normal SVR. So that can be done by giving extra
Opioids.
right? So if you maintain a high opiate anesthesia, you can always maintain the SVR, isn't it? So you use a high opiate anesthesia, okay? So, okay. Then what other things you will avoid? I said the patient is having NYHA grade 3 with pulmonary hypertension. What all you will avoid?
During maintenance, I will prefer to use oxygen with air mixture and inhalational agent. I will avoid nitrous oxide in this patient because it can increase the pulmonary vascular resistance and increase in the pulmonary arterial hypertension. So I would like to avoid nitrous oxide.
Then
you will avoid nitrous oxide. You will avoid
I will avoid
hypoxia. You will avoid hypocarbia. You will avoid acidosis. Right? All these can kick up the pulmonary hypertension. So all these, and you also have to avoid hypothermia. Right? Okay. So what about neuraxial block? Supposing the patient is not for lap appendicectomy, open appendicectomy. Will you give neuraxial block in this patient?
Since the patient is in severe MS like NYHA 3, I would like to go with general anesthesia so that hemodynamically patient can be stable. If I neuraxial, there will be a sympathetic blockade. This can lead to massive hemodynamic instability.
What about epidural? Epidural combined spinal epidural.
I would like to avoid spinal in this patient, and if epidural is preferable, I would go with graded epidural.
Your patient is NYHA grade 2. Will you give spinal or epidural?
Ma'am, preferably graded epidural will be, because
you can give a narcotic in the intrathecal space and you can grade up the epidural in your case. Yes, you can do it. Okay, and avoid epinephrine containing local anesthetic agents. These are very important when you're using regional anesthesia in these patients, right? And at any point of time, you have to avoid hypotension and hypothermia.
How will you treat hypotension?
You have to treat them aggressively. Remember that.
What is the drug you give to treat hypotension?
Phenylephrine is preferred because it doesn't cause any tachycardia. So phenylephrine is used.
All right. Now your patient is for MVR. Patient is coming for open heart surgery. Okay. Now you have induced the case. The patient is coming off bypass now. All right.
Yes.
But but the patient, but there is the blood pressure is just not picking up. Okay. And the pulmonary artery pressures are very high. That's a tense pulmonary artery. So what do you do now?
Venodilators, Mildred, phosphodiesterase inhibitor, Mildrenol can be given.
Yes, you can. Initially, you can give NTG to see whether it is coming down. Otherwise, you can give Mildrenone, or you can give levosimendan. You can give that. Okay. With that, the pulmonary artery pressure will try to come down. But still, the LV is failing. Why the LV is failing in these patients? Once the blood is being returned back to the heart, the LV is not able to take it up.
Mitral recut.
No. See, the LV has been sleeping all the while. Right?
Due to cardiac.
No, the LV, there is, the LV is sleeping all the while. Okay. And myocarditis affects the entire heart. It doesn't affect only one part of the heart, right? Isn't it? So it is a chronic LV dysfunction, which is there, right? And the LV has been sleeping. It has never taken a load. Suddenly you want to give so much of load to the LV. LV is unable to bear that much of load. So it starts failing. So what do you do in that time?
Can dobutamine for increasing the force of contractility? Or
Epinephrine is the drug of choice. Okay? Epinephrine is the drug of choice. So you have 0.05 microgram per kilogram per minute, you can give. Okay? And the problem in these cases is de-airing. You have to be very, very careful about de-airing in these patients because the LA is huge. Okay, LA is huge, and there could be persistence of atrial fibrillation while coming off bypass also. Remember that. So you have to treat properly with beta blockers if needed. Okay. And anything else? Ma'am, Koshi madam, should we talk about BMV or do we talk about pregnancy? No needed. Not needed.
Pregnancy maybe, because that's important. Pregnancy. Right?
All right. Your patient is pregnant and has come for an emergency cesarean section. Patient is breathless. Okay. So what the mitral valve area is 0.9, pulmonary artery hypertension is 70, 65, 70. Okay. And the patient has come for cesarean delivery. What will be your choice of anesthesia?
My plan of anesthesia will
So
be,
I take for granted that you are going to step up your monitoring. So I'm not going to ask you about anything about that. Just give me the choice of anesthesia and why. Yeah.
I would prefer, I'm going for general anesthesia with controlled mechanical ventilation with endotracheal tube, probably with post-op. I will advise for post-op ventilation also in this patient. Why I'm taking general anesthesia is since in immediate postpartum, the cardiac output, there is a cardiac output can increase for around 80%. So sudden decompensation can occur. So it will be
why it will increase?
Due to auto transfusion of the blood from the the third stage of the so chances of decompensation and chances of heart failure, pulmonary edema is more. So we will manage in GA accordingly. If we are giving a spinal or epidural, there will be sympathetic blockade. So it will be difficult to manage the patient with severe.
So how will you manage that auto transfusion?
Auto transfusion.
Patient goes into pulmonary edema now.
Yes, ma'am. Patient, we will give 100% oxygen we will give
Diuretics.
diuretics IV furosemide 40 mg, then positive pressure ventilation with a PEEP. Then if the
Morphine.
injection
Morphine.
IV morphine will be given because it dislodges the blood from the pulmonary circulation to the systemic circulation. Then
Very right. So pregnancy is known to aggravate mitral stenosis, right?
yes, ma'am.
So what are the physiology in pregnancy which actually aggravates mitral stenosis?
And cardiovascular changes in pregnancy include increase in the blood volume around 30 to 40%, increase in the cardiac output around 40%, and decrease in the SVR.
Increase in SVR or decrease in SVR?
Decrease.
Decrease in SVR. Pregnancy causes a decrease in SVR, right? Right.
Then
Also, pregnancy is a procoagulant state. Chances of thromboembolism is also
Yes,
high.
yes, very nice, very, very well done. Plus, supposing the patient is coming for labor, the sympathetic stimulation during labor and delivery can aggravate the symptoms. So the patient will need labor analgesia,
Yes.
right? Labor analgesia will actually really help the patient, isn't it? Very well done, very well done. Ma'am, you want to ask anything else?
It was nice.
So if the patient is, say, NYHA grade 2, would you want to give general anesthesia?
Ma'am,
Patient
is the pregnant patient, ma'am?
Coming for cesarean.
For cesarean delivery.
If it is an elective
Patient is
cesarean-
able to lie down.
Ah.
Patient is able to lie down comfortably.
Hmm.
You want to give general anesthesia or you want to give regional?
Ma'am, is it an emergency LSAS or
No, elective.
Elective. I would prefer to give a graded epidural in this patient. GA should be avoided.
graded epidural will be.
It's not,
I prefer
Preferred is graded
Graded
it's
epidural.
not should be avoided, but it is safer to give graded epidural analgesia because of what? Why graded epidural is better?
Ma'am, graded epidural, we can go up to post-op analgesia also. So post-operatively, we will decrease.
Is that the reason? Is that what we are looking at?
Then
Why graded epidural is better?
Decreased sympathetic block. Sympathetic.
It is a slow sympathetic block.
so the patient can cooperate well with
Also,
the
you can
dynamic.
control the block, control the segments.
Yes, ma'am.
It's a gradual blockade,
Gradual
right? You
membrane
can
block.
control the segments, right? You can also give CSE by giving a narcotic in the intrathecal area, and you can give a graded epidural also you can give, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Very nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Girls, you did very well.
Thank you, ma'am.
And all the best for your exam. And I'm sure both of you all will come back with flying colors. I'm sure you will do that. Very, very well done.
Thank you.
Very well done. Yeah. Just those whatever little things which I told you, small things, that will just add up to your already distinction marks. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.